Hello, my name is Emmalynn Johnson, and my thesis is on the responsibility of parents. Who is responsible for school shootings? In Littleton, Colorado, 1999, the Columbine High School massacre occurred, where two 12th grade students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, shot and killed 12 students and one teacher using guns that they had bought from an adult friend. In 2005, in Red Lake, Minnesota, a 16-year-old boy named Jeff Weiss shot and killed 10 people, including himself, using his grandfather's police weapons. In 2012, in Chardon, Ohio, 17-year-old Thomas Lane shot and killed 3 students at Chardon High School using a handgun belonging to his uncle. In 2018, Demetrius Bogortzis, who was 17 years old, used a shotgun and a revolver owned by his father to shoot 23 students and staff members, killing 10 and injuring 13 others at Santa Fe High School in Santa Fe, Texas. In 2024, at Appalachia High School near Winder, Georgia, a 14-year-old boy named Colt Gray shot and killed 4 individuals and injured 9 others using a gun his father had bought for him. In all of these cases, the minor, who violently ambushed students while they were at school, did not and could not have owned the guns used in the mass murders. How are teenagers, who are minors, able to possess deadly weapons? They obtained the weapons from parents, grandparents, and even adult-age friends. These cases are made worse by the additional reality that the aforementioned murderers showed signs of mental instability and psychosis. What is the level of responsibility parents should have when they know that their child is struggling mentally or being bullied by peers at school, or even threatening death, whether it is upon themselves or other people? And even in that mental condition, how could parents make possible the opportunity for their children to practice shooting at shooting ranges with guns that should not be available to them? These minors should have no access to these weapons, much less high-powered ones, yet their parents allow them to access them, even if that allowance is a lack of properly securing them. Parents should never lose track of where their weapons are, and their children should not be able to have access to these weapons at any time. In this paper, many terms need to be defined. A mass shooting is a tragic and detrimental event where one or more person uses firearms to kill or injure multiple individuals in a public setting, often resulting in significant loss of life and injuries. Minors are individuals who are legally under the age of 18 and are considered not fully responsible for certain actions due to their age and maturity level. Mental instability and psychosis are severe mental health conditions where the individual may experience a disconnection from reality, which could result in violent events such as mass murders. Parental neglect is when parents or guardians fail to provide adequate supervision, emotional support, or meet their child's basic needs, including mental health needs, which could lead to potential harm or the lack of development in the child's brain. Involuntary manslaughter is a criminal charge used when individuals are responsible for the death of another person due to negligent actions. In many cases, parents are failing to prevent their children from committing mass murders in school settings. When gun safety measures need to be used, they are laws, practices, and policies designed to ensure that firearms are stored safely and securely, preventing unauthorized access, accidental shootings, and intentional misuse by individuals, particularly minors. The responsibility of parents is the legal and moral obligations that parents have to protect, guide, and nurture their children, including ensuring their physical safety, mental well-being, and appropriate access to resources, such as firearms. Accountability for gun ownership means holding individuals, particularly parents, responsible for ensuring that their weapons are properly secured and inaccessible to those who might misuse them, especially minors struggling with mental health issues. Children who are not given proper attention by their parents, or in the worst cases are neglected by their parents, often end up making some sort of harmful decision, whether it hurts them or hurts someone else. When a parent neglects their child, then they should be liable for how their child uses their feelings to rebel. By law, parents must provide food and a home for their child, supervise their child, including paying attention to their child's mental and physical health, protect their child from abuse, discipline their child, and financially provide for their child. However, in recent years, courts are ruling that parents are also responsible for protecting children from themselves in an effort to prevent mass shootings. According to Growing Up to Be Violent, a longitudinal study of the development of aggression, Statistics are used to prove that children who watch their parents fall into addiction to drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, or even money often end up falling into the same type of addiction as their parents. Another issue is when the child has experienced a form of abuse from their parents. This leads to traumatized and rebellious children who do not know the wrong in hurting others because they were comfortable with their parents harming them. NBC News recently reported of the disturbing and preventable circumstances surrounding a mass shooting involving Ethan Crumbley, who attended Oxford High School in the state of Michigan in 2021. He was a troubled 15-year-old who claimed to have been bullied by peers at school. This led to Ethan developing depression and displaying signs of psychosis. He would say, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me." Despite Ethan showing signs of desperation, his parents did not seek out counseling for their son. Instead, they neglected him and went along with their lives. His father, James Crumbley, was too busy with work, and his mother, Jennifer Crumbley, was immersed in an affair she was having with another man. On November 25th, 2021, Ethan's parents bought him a gun as a gift for Thanksgiving. 5 days later, on November 30th, 2021, the school officials called both parents, asking them for a conference to discuss their child's alarming behavior, including drawing pictures depicting gun violence and even blood. After having met with school officials, Ethan's parents did not seek out immediate help for their son. Instead, they departed the school, the final display of abandonment of Ethan, and on that day, Ethan went on a killing spree, killing 4 of his classmates with a gun his parents had bought him at Thanksgiving. Now, Ethan is 17 years old and is sentenced to a life in prison without parole. But what happens to the parents? Not only did they neglect their parental duties, they equipped Ethan with the gun that he used to kill his 4 innocent classmates. The courts have sentenced James and Jennifer Crumbley to 10 to 15 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter, marking the first time in America's history that parents have been convicted for the mass shooting at a high school. Some would say that Ethan's parents should not be held responsible for his actions at all. After all, they did not pull the trigger. It might be argued that parents cannot always tell when teenagers are struggling because they like to hide their emotions, and no parent or person should be blamed for a situation in which they did not partake. Conversely, others say that Ethan's parents should absolutely be held accountable for these 4 deaths because they provided Ethan with the gun that he used to kill these 4 classmates. The children naturally take directly after their parents, and in many cases, mimicking their every move. For example, if a child sees their parent being violent and abusive, the child learns from the parent, either taking directly after them or learning what not to do when they become a parent. Growing up to be violent, a longitudinal study of the development of aggression gives a claim that proves when it is dangerous, stating that when parents and adults have witnessed others acting in an aggressive manner, they too will behave more aggressively. After all, parents hold the primary responsibility for molding their child's minds. The child naturally takes directly after their parents and in many cases mimicking their every move. If parents fail to make themselves emotionally available for their child or if parents fail to make themselves emotionally available for their children or neglect The New York Times took responses from students from various schools on whether or not they agree with parents being held accountable for minors' crimes. One student justifies the remark that parents must know their minors' overall whereabouts and basic sources of communication. The student claims that in doing so, parents will be more equipped to know the mental state of their child, as it lends itself to the dialogue that informs parents of whether or not their child is depressed, angry, upset, happy, stable, or unstable. If parents do not ask their children how they are doing or are not approachable, then how should a child share their thoughts and feelings with their parents? According to Hamza from the New York Times, an agreed upon argument is that if a parent completely ignores extremely obvious signs of their children's mental instability and even enables their unstable behavior, then they are responsible for the actions that their children make under the influence of that behavior. Ethan's parents deserve their sentence for realizing the extent of Ethan's deteriorating mental health and choosing to ignore it. They were warned of his words, drawings, and actions, yet still voluntarily chose to proceed along with their lives. In court, both parents claimed that they had knew that Ethan had been struggling, but did not know what to do for him and did not find help for him. A news report concerning Ethan's parents' sentences for involuntary manslaughter prosecutors mentioned Jennifer's son's mental health during court proceedings, stating that prosecutors argued that she knew of her son's deteriorating mental health and social isolation, and that he has access to a weapon, but that she cared more about her hobbies and indulging in an extramarital affair than about being present at home. How is it fair that a parent be held accountable for their child's actions? The child committed the crime, therefore he should be the only one that is punished, right? The parents never intended for their child to act in such harmful ways, and it is not their fault that their child turned out this way. To back this, here is a quote from a lady who was interviewed by the New York Times, stating that when children and adults have witnessed others acting in an aggressive manner, they too will behave more aggressively. To prove that, she argues that once a child is at an age that they can make their own decisions, the parent can only hope that they have learned right from wrong. This statement is valid, but there is too much gray area. We do not know the background of the parent or the child. We do not know if the parent was abusive or negligent. Therefore, we cannot say that the statement is true or false because we do not know if the child was taught what is right from what is wrong. You cannot label a parent guilty or innocent of a crime they didn't commit if you do not know the background of the parent and the child. In the Crumbley's family's case, there was evidence that both parents neglected Ethan's mental health and did not make time for him when they were made aware by school officials that he was struggling. Children constantly have concepts and ideas thrown in their faces. Not only are they influenced by their parents, but also by the society and culture around them. Things like social media, friends, family, and even just the world they live in impact a child's mind way more than we think. Children see things that they shouldn't know about until they're mature adults. They're exposed to violent scenes, crimes, murders, rape, and many other things that are detrimental to the child's mind. No child should have to process these things at such a young age, but no one can no one can prevent them from being exposed to it. In effect, the child is probably afraid of how his parents will react. Said child might be scared that if their parents find out what they've seen, they will not let them have social media, watch TV, or even have basic communication with anyone. Said child might The problem is that the child is surrounded by these negative, impactful visuals, and there is nowhere they can go to escape from it. So, how are parents supposed to keep their children from seeing these things? Parents must be proactive in making sure that they are confrontable for their children. In conclusion, the problem of minors gaining access to firearms and using them to violently ambush students and teachers points out the severe consequences of parental neglect and the inability to have safe gun measures. The examples of mass shootings from Columbine to Oxford High School point out the severe consequences of parental neglect and mental instability. In these cases, the minors involved were able to access weapons from parents, grandparents, and even just their peers around them, individuals who should have been responsible for their weapons. The solution to this problem lies in both greater accountability for gun ownership and The solution to this problem lies in both greater accountability for gun safety measures and responsibility of the parents. Parents must take responsibility for their child's actions and must be proactive in ensuring their physical health and safety. Mental health awareness is crucial, and parents must ensure Mental health awareness is crucial, and parents Thank you. I would like to open the floor for questions.
While you catch your breath and get some water, I have just a crazy story about this whole topic. So the first example that we used was I lived in Colorado in 1999, and I was a junior at Parkway High School when that happened. And you'll never believe where I was sitting. I was sitting in Michelle Cheney's. She was my
She
English
just
teacher.
called out my age.
Mine too.
Thanks, Miss Beard.
No problem. But I remember how the nation was just couldn't believe what had happened. I remember Miss Cheney as my teacher. I remember we wrote cards to the surviving students, and what an awful thing to say. It was surviving students because so many were killed that day. And it's just a day I'll never forget. We were all so scared to come to school the next day. They were, copycat threats, and they were nationwide. And of course, at the time, I don't believe any parents were held responsible for the two the murderers of that day. But we've seen so many since that time that they finally are being held responsible for this. So you did a good job.
I know it's easy to let a moment like this stand in front of a lot of people just be a little overwhelming because you kind of all your work that you put in so far, it's like you're laying it bare before everyone, but it's obvious from looking at your paper that you have thought deeply about this, and so I do think you have a great ability here to speak into this topic and to answer a couple of questions about this. So I have one question just right off the top of my head. One is, like we've asked many students before, what was it about this topic that was compelling to you and that made you choose this topic?
So during junior year, me and Miss Barish, I had 2 other topics that I was thinking about doing, and I really didn't even think about this topic. But Miss Barish and I had talked about the shootings that were happening and how children were suffering and showing signs of psychosis, like I stated in my paper, and parents weren't doing anything to help their child, and in result, the child ended up taking their parents' weapons and using them to commit violent acts and taking the lives of other people. And it's terrible, and it's so sad and disheartening that the parents didn't care enough about their children to help them get out of this hole.
Yeah, it seems like what you're speaking about is not every parent responsible for every crime of their kid, because it seems like a particular set of circumstances where there's obvious parental neglect in the example that you provided, where it just seems like all the signs were there and the parents obviously made a choice between what they wanted and then as opposed to what the needs of their child were. I just wonder if you thought, does this same kind of standard, are there other crimes you think that this should apply to as well?
Absolutely. I think that me and Miss Barish had talked about a story where these kids had sneaken out and destroyed a golf course, and parents should be held accountable for that. They didn't know where their child was. They didn't know what their child was doing, and they should have. And in effect, these children destroyed probably, I would expect, thousands of dollars of property. Absolutely, especially like stealing. Mm-hmm.
So Emmalynn, I appreciate you covering this topic. The Crumleys seem like a pretty egregious case where they knew their kid was struggling, they bought him a gun while he's struggling. That seems pretty crazy in and of itself, but a lot of the cases aren't as like clean or clear as to how to decide those.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if they're not buying their kid a gun in the middle of depression, how does a judge figure out if the parent should be guilty or not?
Okay, so even if the parents didn't buy him a gun, and if they don't have their own weapons or guns, the parents, in no way am I saying that parents should I think that it is like a good bonding time for, say, a grandpa and his grandson to go out and hunt. I think that's perfectly fine, but these children are showing signs of mental instability and just like severe mental health disorders, and the parents aren't doing anything to help the child. Like, they're not getting counseling. Say maybe they haven't bought them a gun, but still they could make an effort to help the child.
I guess, it's interesting because like our dog got out once. A neighbor's accusing the dog of killing their cat, and so Melissa got cited for that and had to appear before a judge for what our dog did, which we weren't trying to let our dog out or whatever. And so it's weird that you wouldn't be responsible for your own child in that sense. Appreciate that. But on the flip side, it's hard to know as a parent what to do. So and as when you're a kid, you have one perspective. When you're an adult, you have another perspective. And sometimes it's hard to know what to do with your child. And so I guess with that, when you don't know what to do, why should you be held accountable for something?
I think that not knowing what to do and simply not making an effort are two different things. I think you can make an effort and not what to do. I'm not a parent, so I don't exactly know, but I think that there are ways, even if they don't know, they can confront the child and ask them, hey, what are you going through? It's not hard to ask your child. Last night my mom said that sometimes I'm not confrontable, and I agree with that. Sometimes I'm just tired of everybody asking me questions, but not right now. So trying to make up for my presentation. Yeah.
Hey, you have a line in your paper that kind of answers that. It says, in all of these cases, the minor who violently ambushed students while they were at school, did not and could not have owned the guns used in the mass murders. So, right, we don't always know But as a responsible gun owner, what are we to do with our guns? We are to lock them. We are to keep them away from anyone really other than ourselves. Children who have psychosis, instability, they may want to go do crazy things, but it is, I think what your research is showing and what judges are looking at, where did they get the gun? Well, if the gun belonged to the parent, why was the gun locked away where the child could not access it? That's a common sense safeguard. You survived.
Yes.
Deep breath. So, one thing,
Okay.
grandpas can also buy granddaughters again.
I have a pocket knife for my grandpa.
But, Emmalynn, I feel like we've had this conversation in class before about any time when we hear about some unspeakable, awful tragedy, the first thing we always look for is what was wrong with that person. Like we start looking for something to blame because it's really difficult for us to think that there's evil in the world. But what do we know? There's evil in the world, right? We always want to blame parents, and we want to blame parents about certain things, but not blame parents about other things. And you also mentioned, you talk a lot about mental illness in here, which I think is so good. And this may not be anything you researched, but what is something the Christian community can do to better, because lots of times the parents are lost too. I mean, this kid's parents are obviously having problems. All parents have problems. Raising kids makes us all crazy, so that's what's wrong with your mom and dad, okay? What can we do as a Christian community to help in this situation? What can we do to make this fallen world we live in better for parents and for kids?
Yes, so I think that prayer goes a lot into it. I think that sometimes like the parents completely didn't expect this, and as I said in my paper, they didn't expect their child to act in such harmful ways and commit these violent acts. I think that as a Christian community, we can provide support because, I mean, you just support. The parents need support if it was completely, or even if it was their fault, they still need support because it's a hard thing to know. I didn't protect my child from doing this. I didn't help them when they needed help. And I think that support and just prayers.
That Columbine killing that you referenced here, there may be some others that have seen it. And both those boys took their own life. And so then you've got parents grieving the loss of a child. Then you've got parents grieving the loss of a child that was responsible for all of that. And there was a documentary they did on one of the boys' mothers, and I remember watching it and being so heartbroken for her. And I don't know. You had a great topic. You struggled in your presentation. You should be very proud of your paper because
Thank
your
you.
research was there.
Thank you.
And you had a really good paper. You did a good job at it.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question.
Mhm.
I was tying in Charlotte's and what Ms. Cheney kind of said.
Yes, ma'am.
I know hers was on more serial killers and not school shootings, but there's been studies, I didn't know if you went down that rabbit hole, about the lack of a developed prefrontal cortex. Genetically speaking, usually those people have lack of empathy, sympathy, it's just in their genetics, so to speak. A show Dexter, they kind of mentioned that. I know it's corny, but also my next question was bullying. I know Columbine, I remember it pretty well, the media attention, and
Yes, ma'am.
I believe there were some bully issues that had gone on that might have led to, to that instance, among others. So I was just wondering if you journey down in that path too. That's kind of and what Ms. Cheney was just mentioning about mental instability and, genetically speaking, and then bullying, and there's a lot of factors that can go into this.
Yes, ma'am. A part in my paper that I didn't talk about because I forgot it was when children get bullied, they take their unresolved feelings and sometimes they can lash out on other people in harmful ways, whether it be school shootings or simply just tearing them down through words and not necessarily actions. But yeah. Okay. If there are no further questions. Okay. It's okay. Okay.
Take one more.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, so about the gender of
Mhm.
Are these like all performed by men, or are there like any women that?
So, yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Max. All of my examples, and I researched every school shooting that a minor did from 1999 to 2025, which the latest one was in 2024, or actually in 2025. But most of them, most of them were committed by males. I think they're just more violent, sadly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.